Hi, everybody. Welcome to this event called Venture Builders, Startups, and Investors in Healthtech. So today we will talk about this relationship between the idea and the startup success that is not always proportional and does not always lean towards success in investment or achieving investment. A lot of great ideas and competent teams are not invested for different reasons. The project is not well defined or structured, or the execution model is not selling. The risk seems too high for investors, or maybe the investors they reach out to, they are not a perfect match to the teams. So there are many reasons for all of these. So it becomes inevitable to work all the different aspects associated to the project and its implementation in order to increase the probability of being invested and to reach success on its go-to-market strategy. Today we will talk about all of these subjects, and we invited three keynote speakers to present their views on this subject. Ricardo Perdigão Henriques, CEO of Bionova, prior known as Ovion Capital, a venture capital focused in health tech sector that invests in early stage startups and companies with products in life sciences. Also with us is Catarina Nunes, CEO of 3D Business Hub, an innovation accelerator, and also managing director of Apollo Health, a technological innovation hub specialized in the health sector. So Catarina is working closely with Healthtech Lisboa, which is a new venture builder specialized in helping Portuguese-based startups in health tech to grow, with the main goal of creating a strong, innovative community in Portugal, more specifically at Lispolis. And also with us is Fadil Musa, co-founder of Delox, which is a spin-off startup of the Faculty of Sciences of the University of Lisbon that developed a new solution called Dry VHP. This is a new technology that releases hydrogen peroxide to sterilize equipment and medical rooms. First of all, I want to thank you for being here and accepting our invitation to talk about this subject.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting.
Hi, nice to be here with you.
So we'll start with Ricardo. Talking about projects and startups, they are not always in the same stage when they reach the hands of an investor. Bionova usually bets on startups in the early stage or seed stage. Should they meet some established criteria before they are invested? For example, is there any minimum billing amounts? Ricardo.
Yeah, so talking a bit about Bionova Capital, we are seed investors, so we go really early, sometimes when projects are still at university, so we don't require any sales because we know that companies in the health sector, they need several years until they can bring a product to market. So we focus on other things, but not on sales. Sales not required. But we have very specific requirements for each project. So depending on the sector of the startup, the requirements change. For example, if you bring to us a project in the therapeutics field, if you are developing a new molecule for a drug, then we require results in animals like mice and other experimental animals that clearly show that the molecule has a potential to treat some human disease. If you bring to us a medtech or digital health project, then we required a minimal viable product before investing. So usually investors don't invest in a PowerPoint, so they need some proof of concept. And investors are different in terms of their requirements. This is our requirements. It doesn't mean that all investors, that all seed investors have the same requirements. So for your project, you also need to match with the right investor that has the requirements that are aligned with your project. And it's not only technology that we look for, also team. Of course, we all know it's the core components of a company. And again, depending on the sector, it changes. For example, if you bring a drug project, then we need the team with really deep knowledge in drug development. for medtech or digital health projects, then it's important to have someone with business and commercial experience, because these projects will go to market much faster. So we need to see from day one that the company has someone that knows how to drive sales of the product. But in general terms, teams, they need to be coachable, meaning that they are open for feedback from the investors, and they need to have a really a sense of urgency. As things need to move fast. I can talk more about the requirements, but I'll let you follow on with questions to the other panelists.
Yes. So as you were saying, startups must have some kind of preparation before talking to investors, right? They don't just have to show their PowerPoints or show their ideas. They have some proof of concept in order to get the investment, right?
Yeah, that's true. So you need to, because the risk is really high. Even when you show us some kind of prototype, it's still a really high risk, because until that prototype goes to market, there's still a lot of things that need to happen. And so whatever you can do to minimize the risk for the investor, the better. I know we are known for taking risk, but we don't like risk.
Yes.
Yeah, I know founders sometimes expect us just to believe, but we need proof, because we always think about the origin of the money, right? So we are investing. We have a fiduciary duty for the money that we are investing. It's not my own money. So each investor gets his money from universities, pension funds, government funds. So we are accountable for that money. So we need to be very criterious, because it's not our money, and we need to generate a return. Otherwise, we cannot build an ecosystem, because returns, it's what makes people then invest again in great ideas, and it's just a virtuous success cycle. So we need to be very criterious, but it is what it is the rules of the game. So you better know them beforehand. So
yes. Of course, it's a big liability, and of course, entrepreneurs must have the role of mitigating the risk. So, Fadil, from a startup point of view, when starting a project, usually the startups and the founders have none to little knowledge of the investment landscape and the requirements needed to succeed in their endeavor. So how did Deluxe prepare to approach investors when you guys first did?
Well, you're absolutely right. Most of the times we have none to a little knowledge. In our case, it was probably none. When we started, we had a lot of training through a lot of programs, and I think that was completely crucial in our case. We had one of our co-founders was already a second-time founder, and still he thought that he didn't know it all. And the other two co-founders, me and Fernando, we thought, okay, we need to have some kind of training, otherwise we won't be able to do this by ourselves. So I would say that for startups, the way to go is first to start looking for projects, programs, and to start to think if there is someone that can teach them what they need to learn. And second, self-training. In our case, so we did a lot of programs. The first program that we did was Healthtech, now it's Healthtech. It's a very good program for training and as a first step, but it's not enough. And so I cannot remember all the nights that I spent just reading about valuations and terms that I graduated in biochemistry. So I had absolutely no idea of what was valuation 3 or 4 years ago. And so it's very funny because it was my first time, my first opportunity to learn about something that I had absolutely no knowledge of. And so starting with valuations and the funding terms and blah 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 blah, it was really funny. It was really I really liked it, and it was an opportunity to see that it's possible for people from other areas to start digging into a different area, and you can still not just learn but really be good at what you do and be good at that part. So it was also a lesson for us. Okay, we can really do this. But it was you know, kind of not so regular path, but eventually we got invested, and today it's very particular situations. It's one of our investors is here, and I believe that when they invested on us, we were really naive and really stepping in the first not just in entrepreneurship, but yeah, exactly.
Yes,
exactly. And so they believed in us, but they believed in us in a part of the project that we were already advancing. We had a proof of concept. We were more or less particularly familiar with some of the terms, some of the fundraising process, but not quite not quite that familiar. Of course, now some years have passed. Now we are more experienced. Sometimes I receive some calls for help, and it's also very. I really like it to see that I now have enough experience to try to help some other people. I'm not the most experienced for sure, but I can at least say, okay, we passed through this. I think this is the way to go. This is not. You should this. You should do that. And well, so nobody called me telling me that, oh, you were really wrong. So so far so good. But yeah, basically what I want to say is you really need to train yourself, and you really need to be very precautious and say, okay, I don't know anything about this. Let me have here a proactive attitude and try to learn as much as I can. So I think that's the right attitude in the beginning of a project.
Yes, and as you said, you might have to ask for help, and that's okay. So programs like Healthtech back in the day, and like Startup Voucher also, that you have been a part of, can help you grow and learn more about entrepreneurship and also investment. So, Katerina, sometimes, like we were talking about, it might be necessary to turn to a specialized partner who knows this entrepreneurial and financing ecosystem, maybe in a region like Lisboa, or maybe in a country like Portugal. So sometimes even in a specific vertical like Healthtech that we are here focusing on. Could this be the role of a venture builder, this specialized partner, helping startups to grow, to get greater preparation and maybe investment probability? What do you think about it?
Absolutely sure, especially bearing in mind that between startups and investors, there's two main problems that rely on risk and trust. There's risk for both investors, and it's easier to think about risk for investors because we're talking about financial risk. But there's also risk for startups, and the risk lies on IP, lack of control of their own structure, which we usually tend to overlook. But for a startup owner or a startup entrepreneur, it's very important to actually make sure that the investor chosen is actually the person they can trust. Problems with maturity to scalability of the product, the proofs of concept, the maturity of the team are usually the things that keep investors away. So venture builders have as main task bridging the gaps between the startups and the investors. Structures like Healthtech Lisboa, structures like mine, have a important and paramount task, in my view, of connecting the startups, preparing them for all this very intense process of due diligence, conducting due diligence for the investor as well, and trying to create a bridge between the interests of the investor and the interests of the startup. For instance, not only Healthtech Lisbon, we also do that. Actually, we usually do that together for startups in the health sector. There's a matchmaking process that takes place after the due diligence of the startup and the investor, and there's a need to not only look at the maturity stage of the startup, but also the investment profile of the investor. Different venture capitalists have different interests, different profiles. They put different weights in areas of concern like maturity or proof of concept. Like Ricardo was saying, they don't necessarily need revenue already, but they need a proof of concept. If we're talking about health technology, the TRL of the specific solution is very important. We, for instance, don't work with anything that is below TRL 6 because there's not enough evidence to get an investor interested unless it's something that is being accelerated within a university campus. So that's the task of a venture builder. That's the main sector where we need to act, and there is an immense market gap for that, and that's where I believe venture builders really can make a difference. Because if we start thinking about the majority of investment in the majority of startups, unicorns are less than likely. And I personally like focusing more on zebras, sustainable companies that are organically growing and actually show some financial development over a reasonable course of time, of course. And that tends to be more rewarding to investors as well. So there's a huge process that needs to be tackled, and that's what venture builders do.
So this role of connecting the dots and creating this relationship between the perfect matchmaking between the investor and also the startup is something that venture builders do. Do you think, Ricardo, it's an important role? How does venture builders play a part in the process of investment at Bionova?
Yeah, so we actually work with several venture builders across Europe. That's how we get a lot of our projects. And, especially in the healthcare, they're very helpful because the projects are really complex and the entrepreneurs can really benefit a lot from this type of feedback. Because the idea here is to not making the same mistakes twice, right? We don't need to be always creating the wheel. If people have done this in the past, why not, helping the future generation doing it in a successful way? And for me, that's the most important aspect of a good venture builder. It's the track record. It's really to having a track record of successful companies that they helped in the past, and bringing true experts to help the projects, because bad advice is worse than no advice. So in Portugal we are still lagging. There's not many good venture builders yet, because especially in Healthtech, we are still in the first generation of Healthtech entrepreneurs, and so we don't have the successful stories that can then teach the younger generations that. But I see good initiatives going now. Also with the digital tools, we can have, for example, an advisor from Boston helping companies here. We do this with our portfolio companies. We have all our portfolio companies being advised by international experienced people. Fadil actually went through this process last year. He looked for a key person to be an advisor in the company, an experienced professional in the United States. And now it's easy for a small startup in Portugal have an advisor in the United States. So really critical the role of venture builders, especially in ecosystems like Portugal, where there is not many track record doing health tech companies. And so the more the better. We work with a lot of them and happy to work more in the future. So it's great for the ecosystem.
Yes. So, Catarina, Healthtech Lisboa is a recent project. It started in September 2020. So it does not have this track record that Ricardo is talking about, but is growing its credibility along the way. So, what can you tell us about Healthtech Lisboa, and how can it offer support to startups that are now growing, and what startups are already in your portfolio, and also mentors like Ricardo was talking about that can help the startups from apart, from different places and different companies that they work in. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yes, for sure. Portugal is actually a challenging market. There's not a lot of things. So starting anything in any field is basically starting from scratch with no background. In Healthtech's case, the structure is composed by several advisors from international structures, people from Oracle, people from AstraZeneca, and we're talking about experienced professionals with over 30 years of experience, people from investments, and the partnerships that were created also ensure that even though the portfolio is small, we have the right advisors to complement the experience of the core team of Healthtech Lisboa, which is already very good. Then there is a concern of identifying things of high value and developing projects consistently. This new project of Healthtech Lisboa with the Pole Wealth that we co-founded together with Universidade Nova de Lisboa and Uninova is a way to actually create an ecosystem to enable other structures like ours to start existing and to acquire an even broader level of experience from other players in the market. Currently, the project has around 36 clinical facilities across Europe. And we're talking about big hospitals and other universities and experts from several different markets connected to a health technology that can also complement the experience that Healthtech has locally. From our standpoint, we are mainly experts in investment. I was the legal manager of a big hedge fund in Boston for 7 years, and I decided to start investing in Portuguese structures to kind of bring something new to the market. So our expertise is more on the due diligence and financial development standpoint, but there's a bigger structure that Healthtech tries to create, and the team is already quite experienced. The portfolio already has some interesting companies. Some were invested in the United States, because investment in Portugal is still narrow and difficult. We are acquiring more venture capitalist partners to help with Healthtech Lisboa, some from the States, a new one from Singapore as well. So the structure is growing and the portfolio is growing as well. There's potential to grow even more. We hope that with this focus of the Portuguese government and the European Union on digital transformation and technology for health, also that enables more companies to show up. There's very interesting things, but there's no model of the ecosystem. We're actually trying to create a digital twin for the ecosystem, the health technology ecosystem in Portugal, to enable a better knowledge of the whole structure, which it's till today very narrow.
Yes, I was going to say it's a continuous process of growing. The network is also growing in terms of mentors and also in terms of investors that are part of this ecosystem and mainly are connected to Healthtech Lisboa. So it's a project we want to hear more about soon, and we want to help grow, of course, in Lispolish. And Fadil, in your perspective from a startup, learning about this ecosystem and knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to new startups that are currently looking for investment in the health tech sector?
Well, Cynthia, I could do a list, but since we don't have a lot of time, I would go for, I think that, and especially in this pandemic, what it's really, really important is for startups and especially first-time entrepreneurs to put their projects around and to showcase them. So we spoke about directly or indirectly, we spoke a lot about networking, about having these venture builders, investors, and a lot of key people to look at your projects and to tell you what's wrong and what's right. When are you in the when you are in the right track, or when you are going on a completely off direction. And if you don't have those people, even though sometimes they can give you bad advice, but as Ricardo said, bad advice is better than no advice. Because if you don't have any input, if you don't have any feedback, you'll be kind of lost. You don't know where to go. You don't know if you should proceed. If you don't know if you should go back. I mean, it's very hard to do this project alone. And in entrepreneurship, there is no space for lone wolves. And so I would say best advice is show your idea around, show what you have, speak with a lot of people, speak with specialized people like Caterina, people like Ricardo, and sometimes other startups, and you need to have different looks. So you don't need just investors or just venture builders or just people from the programs, so from startup vouchers and Lispolis, and you need everyone. That's really important. You need different feedback, and I think that's the most crucial, especially when starting a new project. That would be my advice. But as I said, I could go on and on.
Yes, so to have a broader vision of the whole ecosystem, it's a key object or subject to have to go to investors and have more be more assertive in your project and in your product, so you can be easily invested. So
Exactly.
is there something else that should be taken into consideration specifically for the health tech and medtech sector for these startups while looking for investment? Ricardo, do you want to share some final thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, so, other aspects like, competitors, for example, it's common for us to get projects, to receive projects where people don't do a very careful competitive analysis. And so then, we get interested in the project, we start working on it, and then, we get disappointed because we see, for example, competitors that are more advanced and with a better technology. So it's really helpful to provide to investors from the beginning a very detailed competitor analysis. You don't need to, your product doesn't need to win in all aspects. We need to understand where you are good at and then try to see if there's a business there. But we need an honest picture from what's going on. And, really focus on the quality of the science and technology, because we are really betting on you. And so, focus on that, because if your project really has quality, for sure some investor will pick on it. It would be strange if you had something really good that no investor could see, right? So don't give up as well. Investors, as we talked, each one has their own requirements. So if you get a no from one, it doesn't mean anything. You just keep moving to the next. Because if your project really has very strong quality, someone will pick it up, someone will invest, and you just need one investor to kick off an idea. So
yeah. That's great. Caterina, do you want to complement this answer?
I would say that for startups in the health sector, it's very important to learn how to navigate the heavy regulations of the sector as well when they start designing a product. That is one of the main problems we see in the startups we work with, is that the product is good, there's already a level of readiness that enables us to test that beyond the lab, but then the regulatory field is so difficult to navigate that it takes a lot of work. If they have the help of a venture builder, it gets easier, or it should get easier, because that's one of the tasks the venture builder can help with, allowing and enabling this process. If they're not, it's a bit more difficult, and it can create some issues in bringing the product even as a proof of concept to market. So that is something I would definitely advise startups to do.
Yes. So talking about venture buildings and startups, Fadil, my last question for you is, when you first started, you didn't know about venture builders, and you only heard about incubators and accelerators, or did you already knew but choose to go other way? And
no,
yeah.
In fact, I was not aware of this concept of venture builders. So yeah, completely just the incubators and the accelerators way. And I hope that this changes for the next people. But in my case, I wasn't aware, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, it's a quite recent concept here in Portugal. Like we were saying, the ecosystem is still a baby.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, I was just going to say that I only learned that concept in the United States. They call it also entrepreneur in residence, and so it's pretty close concept, which means that sometimes we need to look at our ecosystem and to try to fish these good concepts and bring it to our home, to Portugal, to our ecosystem, because there are people and there are ecosystems who are much more evolved than ours, and so if we stay close in our ecosystem and we don't learn with others, we're losing on a lot of good opportunities.
Yes, we should look at other examples and follow the good practices of other ecosystems in other countries, right?
Exactly.
Any final thoughts? Does anybody have a final sentence they want to share to close this interesting conversation?
I'm not very good with final sentences, to be honest. Just for the pitches, and even sometimes.
Katerina.
Well, from my standpoint, if there's an idea and someone is stubborn enough to actually try it out, the key word is stubbornness. Try it out and be stubborn about it. Otherwise, it's a painstakingly process and it's not worth it. So stubbornness.
Great. Ricardo.
Yeah, last thought, be careful with the investors you choose, because, they will be partners for a long time. So it's not, people always talk about investors doing due diligence to the startups, but startups should also make due diligence to the investors, talk with their portfolio companies, how they work with them, see what investments they have done, what they have done before investing, do your homework, because sometimes it's better to not have any investor than having a really bad investor in the company that destroys value. So be careful.
Thank you. Fadil, it's your turn.
My turn. Okay. If I need to leave an advice, I would say to try to choose or try to find the right mentors and the right people to help you throughout the process. I think it's linked with what we've been talking here. But for some time we were very stubborn in that area. But now that we have a lot of people to whom we can pick up the phone and just ask the questions and to have the right answers, it's very important. So from the beginning, stubbornness is definitely the most important one, but as stubborn as you can be, if you don't have anyone to tell you, yes, you're doing it right, or yes, you should do this, you will be stubborn on a bad idea, and so that makes no sense. So try to have the right people. This is also associated with what Ricardo is saying. If you don't have the right investors, you're wasting your time. So have the right people, not just externally, but also in your team. And your team is everything. And so your team is everyone that you have at your disposal, internally or externally. So I would go for that.
Yes, and like we used to say in Polish, wasting time is a very consumption of money, and it's not worth it. So try to find an idea that's worth your time, which is equal to worth your money. So I want to thank
more
you
important.
Yes. I want to thank you all for being here and sharing all your thoughts on this subject with us, and also for your time. And I want to thank everybody in the audience, which is seeing us on this event. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for keeping up with us. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For inviting us.